Hey everyone, welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that I made it. It was late today, technical difficulties, computers wanting to update. Why does it feel like now is Mercury retrograde for me? I have no idea why. Mercury is still in its shadow and coming into brand new territory in its home sign of Gemini. Very mercurial thing and get way ahead of myself. Good morning. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. I'm so grateful that you're here. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome to Catalyst Energies. This is the Catalyst Astrology Report for the week. Today is the 17th. We'll look at the main astrological themes throughout the weekend and into next week to kind of get ourselves really and looking ahead, forecasting for the astrological weather, so to speak. So how is everyone doing? It is Friday. I'm looking at the chat here on YouTube, which is where we are streaming live. Good morning. It's been a week of frustration, and I allowed for distractions. Getting back on track today. It's time to refocus. Ooh, that's an interesting perspective, because I feel like that is actually that distraction word seems like it's going to be becoming more relevant as we move forward, right? That these distractions are going to start mounting, or challenges or things that will pull us off of our focus. So the solstice is a big part of this conversation. Megan is saying frozen, so many tech glitches the last day or so. Yes, absolutely. Everything has been updating. Things are buffering. I can even see in the stream right now that it's buffering really badly, and I have no idea why, right? I've turned off every other device. I've set my settings, so if it's buffering, I'm sorry. I know for a fact the recording is going to be just fine, and that'll be up on Odyssey and BitChute and YouTube, and Rumble as well. So if it's really annoying for the stream, I totally get it. And I'm wondering if the sound is buffering or if it's just the video. I'd be curious to know if somebody wouldn't mind putting that in there. So let's look at something really, let's look at some eye candy here to get us inspired as I kind of start launching into the astrology, kind of checking in with what's been going on. How is everyone feeling? Wow, the time thing is still very relevant as far as I can tell. I'm certainly having experiences around time that are still distorted, or in some ways is slowed down, right? And Saturn is in its retrograde. Saturn is the Titan in Greek mythology that ruled time, right? Chronos. And so to have the retrograde, it does seem like time's slowing down. But as we may or may not have been coming to recognize or discover, or explore, that time may be relative to our own perception, and certainly to the force of gravity. That seems to be the case as well. And Saturn represents materiality in the Capricornian archetype, right? The unfolding of the materium, of the matrix of physicality or establishment. So, and that has, again, a lot to do with time, gravity, and the density of all that. So, in some ways, I feel like this Saturn retrograde period, which is going to take us out into certainly throughout the summer and into the fall, that we will get an opportunity to really establish for ourselves the capacity for our own structuring and foundation when it comes to the collective voice, whatever that happens to be at any given moment, and our ability to really find stability and security in that. And I think we're really going to be tested. It's starting to kind of ramp up. I'm wondering if anybody else is noticing that. So Emily had made a point to say that she's allowed for distractions, and maybe that is a good thing in terms of using yourself of like, okay, this is like a practice run. Here is the distractions that pull me off my center. So practicing getting back. Barb says, seems like the audio is suspended along with the video. Whenever it goes into buffer, now it's better. Well, we'll see how it continues on. Megan is wide awake in Tennessee. Yeah, I feel like I'm not making progress, but it's okay because I have time. Not overly motivated to make big change, but super aware that change is coming if I initiate it or not. Yeah, I think that is spot on, actually. And the change is so big that it will ripple into everybody's lives and make change. And the progress is more of an alignment with what is unfolding at the collective level, as opposed to any of us kind of forcing things. And this is going to be part of the the third quarter square that we are going to have on Monday. So we have a third quarter moon on Monday squaring the sun, last degrees of Pisces and Gemini, which I think really, and I could feel it coming in the air tonight. Yes, maybe that should be like a theme song for what is going on right now, because a lot of people are feeling it across the board. So people that I work with and clients I work with who are in the professional healing arts or in intuitive arts in some way, many of the people that I've been working with at least are feeling a need to step back, reconfigure, possibly consolidate their inner resources. And that's, again, we're coming into a 0 degrees Cancer sun at the solstice, right? This is the root system. This is the new flag goes up, and it's a point of no return in some ways. And so we don't have to really be so caught up in identifying and picking something as much as the sun in Gemini would love us to do that, because there is a lot more at undercurrents that are part of our experience that are also going to be brought into, I think, the coming weeks and months. So there were some big transits that happened this week. Okay, let's just kind of recap for a second. We had our full moon on to keep me from staying on point here. So, and that is a good way to think about some of what's coming up, because right now with the full moon that we had in Sag, a lot of people felt the eye of the storm kind of vibe. I think a lot of Sag people finally were like, geez, I'm like back to myself for once. We talked about this actually in the Catalyst classroom last night, and so that replay is up for subscribers, as well as the slide, the PowerPoint slides that I used to present. So there is a lot about mastering one's own self in the face of difficult situations, in situations that may represent kind of a toxicity or a poisoning, right? We have Ophiuchus, that is where the star that the moon was most conjunct with at the time of the full moon. So we talked a lot about that. In fact, we talked entirely about that. And I think that we got a really good sense at the full moon, like what's working in that realm do we feel like we can bear the serpent within our own selves? Can we hold the intensity of the wisdom that the serpent archetypally represents? The full moon gave us a really good sense of where we are at internally with where everything has been in terms of the polarity, the dialectic, all of those Gemini themes, right? Even the transition from past to future is wrapped up in the Gemini archetype as well. This time of year as it's growing, but nothing will come to pass in terms of a larger cycle, a lineage, right? Bearing fruit, sowing new seed, the whole cycle of life. Nothing will come of it if there is no root system I think that that's a really good thing to keep in mind as we go through this. So, without getting too distracted about the stream health, and knowing that the recording is going to be just fine for everybody in case it's so choppy that it's really hard to bear at this point, I'm just going to start moving on. So I thought it might be worth it in this moment, at least, to take a look just really quickly at the reading that we had at the Starseed Ministry on Monday, because it's always good to see how things have really started to unfold. So we see the Six of Discs as our causal factor, right? Success, right? Material success, some level of learning and not taking things for granted, really coming to embody internally and emotionally the real value of things, and not what we had maybe like projected onto things because we go through something. We have the Eight of Wands, which is reversed, right? That swiftness of energy, maybe internalized or slowing down in some ways as the heart of the matter. And then the Prince of Discs really is this slow, industrious, patient, resolute type of energy, moving forward, putting things into form, but not in a hurry necessarily, and still using the realm of the mind and ideas and a sense of momentum, but also being very methodical about it. It's a very Taurus thing, right? Just put at a time. And like Megan said in the chat, right? Feeling like there's no progress. But it's like going out to my garden every day and being like, oh, you're going to grow up big and tall. And it seems like they're not doing anything because they're still so little. But guaranteed I walk away for 3, 4, 5 days and come back and be like, whoa, something happened. It's all about perspective. And when time slows down, it's going to seem like nothing is happening, when in fact, it's just perspective that is changing. And I've heard some things about CERN being turned back on and some kind of like fear-oriented, where is that Guardians of the Looking Glass thing. And, I listened to it and that was like the first thing. I was just like, this is not empowering anybody to do anything other than to be really afraid and like pulled into some sort of like cult mentality. It was really bizarre. So I didn't really, even if that is the case, even if there is this push and utilization of technology to make these things happen, I mean, it's not, what are we going to do other than to continue to walk the pathway that we've been walking for probably multiple incarnations now at this point. And so to trust ourselves, trust that we came here not to just be like, whatever, right? I'm just gonna turn off, right? And Venus right now in Taurus, God bless her heart, as a planet, as an archetype, she is at home and she's coming into conjunction with the Pleiades. So we'll get into all of that too, because that's a big portal opening, a big Pleiadian portal opening. And we'll look at the last time Venus was in Taurus, because if I remember correctly, it's a time where a lot of souls, right, took the advantage of going, through that gateway and passage in transition. So, and I'm not trying to make any predictions necessarily. It's more of just making these connections. So you can see that there was a lot of, mastering the polarity, right? Seeing the drama or conflict as a message, as a means to look at things from a higher perspective, right? Embodying these really strong elements of the elk and having integrity, but also really tapping into our higher self, our spiritual guidance, our guidance team. The Meerkat is about finding that support and really assessing whether the battle, as much as we feel so strongly about it, is, where do we draw the line in terms of cost benefit ratio here in terms of fighting each other. So just want to give some context of how this week has been, right? Mars and Chiron came into a conjunction. Venus has met, since we last met in terms of astrology over the weekend, last weekend, Venus and Uranus were in a conjunction. So things really woke up, and it's going to be interesting see how this weekend unfolds, right? So we have the solstice, we have a third quarter moon, and in fact, Venus is going to be in square to Saturn. So we have another Pleiadian oriented activation, Starseed activation, an Atlantean activation as well, at least Atlantean memory activation, and I'll go into that when we're looking at the chart. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick and see if it's how it's going. So Barb says, I'm not making much physical progress and goals either. For me, the big adjustments are intern, just accepting that as what needs to happen. And if you do, like that's your, if it resonates with you and that feels empowering to you and that you feel like that makes sense to you, then go for it, right? So I'm just offering my perspective. My distractions this week shined a light on my shadows, been trying to push and force, and I'm being told to refocus and get back into the flow. Big important messages here, guys, about the internal flow, getting back into the flow. So I'm going to get into I'm going to bring up the chart for today, and we'll just get into the astrology for the week. But one thing I want to share is that I have a very specific practice in the morning. I do readings a lot in that space that I don't always share. Sometimes they're for other people that then later in the day are like, hey, reaching out for support or guidance or reading, and then I'm like, oh, that reading was kind of for you. So I have I have a practice, and it's not always to be shared, right? Just like with the rest of us, and just like my own guidance, contact, my own visitations, right? A lot of it is really for my own enrichment in order to then fulfill my role in this incarnation, not so much channeling messages through. Sometimes that does happen. It happens more when I'm reading for people as opposed to giving these larger messages. But I will share that it doesn't often happen in waking time that I get such strong pop-ins, but I did get a really strong pop-in from a really strong guide. And we were just talking about Arcturus because that was one of the big, and this morning I have a very tall, very strong guardian, Arcturian guardian, shamanic journeying, a particular energy worker that I go to now definitely was able to, have an interaction with this being in one of our sessions. And it's always been present, right? Always steering me where I need to go in case I am about to step into something pretty destructive, right? And so a guardian angel, right? You could think it, but it's very Arcturian, this being. And popped into my morning, meditation pretty clearly in my mind's eye, right? Like very clairvoyantly. And so I really got a sense here that there is incredible support, and there's a lot of us being guided and surrounded with this presence, and to be very and to make sure that I knew, right? Which also signals to me that, the eye of the storm is soon to be passing. And I think that yesterday's sun, right? You can see here that the sun and Saturn retrograde were in a trine together. Lilith and the sun are, they just came past each other in a conjunction, right? Just within the last day. And Black Moon Lilith is the lunar apogee, right? The point of the lunar orbit around the Earth that is the furthest away. Are strong. So those two aspects have been opposite each other. So knowing that the sun and this really deep primal part of ourselves that is more like a space rather than and is hardly ever reflected upon like the moon. It's never reflected upon, but it's in conjunction with the sun right now. So there's something here with this these two together, and then a trine to Saturn retrograde for all of us that is, strip it down to the bare essentials, right? Get at the base archetype of the duality that you are identifying with, and allow that to be stabilized by a sense of deep just a gravity that is so strong but yet so secure that there doesn't need to be anything, right? Think about a root system of trees that is so ancient and so old and is so strong that it seems like, oh, nothing's happening there. Well, something is absolutely happening there. And in terms of Saturn in Aquarius, it's not even based in the material aspect, but in the strength and the stability of the collective voice as a whole, and what collective voice you are in resonance with, that you choose to being part of as well, right? That Leo Aquarius axis. You will see, right, with this Saturn retrograde, it will start really shoring itself up within all of us, and where we find that root power. And that is what the solstice, regardless of what hemisphere you find yourself in, the 0 degrees Cancer point of the sun represents the root power. So in the northern hemisphere, as we're at the top of the wave function, right? The wave function that is the yin yang of our seasonal cycle at the top. Now, at the height of light, right? It is not getting dark. The further north you go, the less, actual darkness you're getting right now. So even last night, 9:30, and it was storming here, like huge lightning shows, just, passing right over. And we're just standing outside watching, right? Standing on the porch, just being like, whoa, it's just constantly flashing. But you still saw like just a glimmer of light behind the clouds, and because there was color, right? So we're at the top of this. in the northern hemisphere. In the southern hemisphere, for my Aussie friends that are part of this troop at this point, it's the same. They're coming into a different season, right? They're coming into winter, but the winter solstice, but still the root system is just as necessary at this point of time too, because it is the root system that sustains you truly, and is the power of the collective throughout the dormant periods of hibernation, which is usually during the winter. So the root power is really the theme. So we are on the northern hemisphere at the top, ready to crest this wave and come down. And when you make your establishment, right, when you establish your own personal root system, when you identify with this decision, this point of no return, and knowing where this is in your chart gives you an idea of what area of life it's to be expressed in, is something where you make a decision. And it takes a little while to adjust to that decision because, like I said, Gemini, all this Gemini energy with the sun and Black Moon Lilith, and now Mercury, the ruler of Gemini, and Venus, right? Venus will move into Gemini by the end of this week. It's all ideas. It's all mutable air. It's all the process of the wave function, right? The back and forth, this or that, yin or yang, black and white, right? What is that all about? Is it strictly a negative or a feedback loop that we're trapped in of just like over and over? Or is it a wave function, right, that is moving through time, space, and is in the process of facilitating evolution, right, in this universe? So how we look at Gemini too, and how we establish a set of roots that give that polarity somewhere to go is really important. So see it as an opportunity, right? And if you're feeling really still, if you're feeling really slow, if it feels like things aren't happening, I assure you it's because the root systems are now starting to establish themselves. And you don't see any real growth at that time. It's all kind of under the surface as the roots are stretching down, right? They're looking for water. They're looking for mostly water, but nutrients as well. And what's interesting is that even the root system of a plant and the plant itself are they're diametrically opposed in their own way, right? Roots need oxygen. The green chlorophyll having parts of the plant above the surface, they need carbon dioxide. So even in that process, you see that there is this need to find equilibrium and to utilize the opposition as a means to grow in whatever direction you need to go in. So, and it's, Jupiter, it's 7 degrees Aries, by the way, which is going to be stationing retrograde soon, between 8 and 9 degrees. It's going to station retrograde. So this is now starting to come into that that part of Aries where you're like, oh, existing at two places at once, right? Like actually having the experience of like, oh, this and that exists within me at once at the same time. Oh, that's what the spark of life and divinity is. So it's all ideas. It's the moon in Pisces, the third quarter moon, I think, that is on Monday, that is going to require us to organize ourselves internally, as all third quarter moons definitely bring about, because there's a crisis in consciousness. So we may identify in some ways with like, okay, this is the decision I'm making. I am 100% behind this decision. I am making this, I'm picking the best out of all of these options, and we're going to go with it. And the moon at the very last degree of Pisces and it's going to cross Neptune, right before this happens. And you can see that right now we have a moon in Aquarius. So it's going to go through Aquarius and into Pisces over the weekend and reach this 30-degree point by Monday. So like dreamy, and also so it's like this last Pisces moon, while Neptune is, I think it might be the last Pisces moon, maybe not entirely, before Neptune stations retrograde. Probably, because Neptune stations retrograde at the end of this month. So yes, the Neptune's going to station retrograde at the end of this month before our next new moon. And so this is the last time the moon will cross a direct Neptune in Pisces for months, probably about 6 months. And so it's going to be everything in the pot, right? It's going to be all possibilities of where you could go is going to be available to all of us. And after it crosses that point, and I think what will be very confusing about this moment is that the reorganization will be the need to, there's no resolving a square, right? There's no resolving this conflict. It's really just learning from how you come out the other side of it, right? They're in cross purposes to each other at a 90-degree angle, and mutability means, oh, something's just going to completely morph and shift and change. When we bring in the energy of not just our own self, but everything that's come before us, all of our multidimensional experiences, the collective unconscious. And if we can clearly visualize the archetype that we want to engage in a new creation as we move through this portal, then I think being aware of that's going to be really important, because Neptune stationing retrograde at the end of this month before moving into the next lunar cycle, which will be a new moon in Cancer, is I think the fog is going to start clearing as Neptune is stationing retrograde, and the soul catharsis and purification is going to be much more internalized, but it'll be much more clear to us as it's happening. And so I think that this square is more of a reminder that it's not just that we make, that we are going to take with us into the next cycle collectively, okay? And it's okay if it's a little confusing. I think that that's just part of the territory with Neptune and Pisces and the moon crossing over. So also consider that dream time is going to be maybe very, very watery, very magical, very mystical. There may be very powerful connections in the astral at this point in terms of look at all the possibilities. It doesn't have to be just one way. And I feel like Neptune stationing retrograde is going to actually that's going to be the main takeaway, is that there's no such thing as the fallacy of totalitarianism is that even in the experience of full oneness, we come back into creation of something new. That is the nature of life, and that is the nature of evolution. And so we return back to source or to God, and then we come back into something new, taking with us everything that has come from where we've been, and bringing that signature is part of the new creation, which is the basis of life, at least in this dimension. I can't speak for anything else, but I would imagine that, life is evolving in all densities. Otherwise, why would we even be here? So, and that's the thing. Evolution is the journey. It's not about the destination. So regardless of where you find yourself, we're all going through the evolution. So this weekend, the moon, like I said, moving through Aquarius, it's going to meet Saturn and really stabilize emotionally, even more so this trine. It will make things a little bit, and really establishing, for themselves, like, okay, this is what it means to really go, embrace this inward, very dense gravitational pull within, and really embrace this. It's not really a stretching, it's just time slowing down based on perspective. But again, it's this degree of where the sun is in a trine to Saturn is a major starseed activation point. You have Orion that's here at 26 to 27 degrees Gemini. It's opposite the galactic center, right? So you're in a trine to Arcturus. You are at this point in a trine to Spica. This is within 2 degrees of both of these stars. And Orion, Spica, Arcturus, And arguably at this point we're within 1 to 2 degrees of a sextile to the Andromeda galaxy. This is a big activation here. Again, so pulling all of these starseed lineages, if you know that you have them, into kind of this where we're all identifying, which is very much about, wow, it's like I said, very much about stripping everything down to the base essentials, right? Getting into the archetype of our own identity, like some serious like Buddhahood here, because it strips it all. Nature, right? You just look at all of the trees that are stripped bare in the winter and everything, and snow's covering the ground, and you're like, there's still life here, right? But you are getting down to the base, so the base essentials of duality here, and taking away all of the surface level accessories, and this identity, right, like getting into what the dialectic about, I think is really a big part of this conversation with Saturn and the stabilization. Transparency, we have to get down to what the dialectic and polarization is actually about. So the equilibrium and the wisdom that the Arcturians offer, the Orion nature that has to do with mastering one's ability to utilize the dialectics through debate, through knowledge, through communication, through just wanting to strongly get to the truth of things. And then, of course, the Andromeda galaxy beings that are just like, freedom is they're, the MO of these beings. And again, there is a certain amount of freedom when stripping down bare to the base essentials and not getting caught up in all of the, like I said, all of the drama that is heaped on top of it. And this is part of the information war, right? So these are all aspects that are directly involved with where Sun and Lilith are in this trine. Now, they were, this is just yesterday, in a direct square to Neptune, right? That is still moving direct. And so as much as that makes sense to us and we can conceptualize that, identify with those ideas, even tap into our own inner authority around these things, the experience spiritually, spiritually, cosmically, multidimensionally, all of these things with Neptune and Pisces, this is where I think the stress and the struggle has presenting itself, because again, this mutability is at least allowing for some shifting and some morphing, but you also can see a possibility of just not actually deciding on anything, or rather than get down to the base essentials of polarization, just kind of get lost in the flow of it all and not really pay attention or make any decisions about anything, right? I'm just gonna flow where the river takes me, and not be, not at least be an active participant and conscious in the process. And many people are under such a spell that they don't even realize that's what's happening to them. And this conflict with this square is also bringing that out, and bringing that out in the larger social and cultural collective on the globe, and certainly in our own lives and the people that we interface with, right? It's being experienced in a lot of different ways. So at least the moon in Aquarius is allowing us to have that detachment in some ways. And if you're an Aquarius person, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. And you're probably loving this Aquarius moon, because you're just like, I can just like have take a break from that emotion, and just kind of realize the power of the emotion and not identify with it. It gets very difficult with Saturn here, but that's okay. I think that Saturn as a co-ruler of Aquarius has got an authority here that we can really tap into, especially if you are Aquarius. So, I'm just going to go through, like I said, major themes here leading up to, Mercury is about to come out of its retrograde shadow, as I said, and you can see that the moon and Saturn together at the same time are in a square to our friend Venus, right? Venus, who is now in conjunction with the Pleiades. This is a big Pleiadian opening. This is a big one. So, because she is the ruler of Taurus, right? And again, when the last time I believe Venus was in Taurus, I know Venus was in conjunction with the Pleiades in March of 2020. And I remember that because that was the first wave of people after the announcement of the scamdemic. So, and my dad's brother passed away right at this time when Venus was conjunct the Pleiades. And so I think, this is a big opening. This is a passageway that's really accessible with Venus, especially as she comes into conjunction with Algol too, right? Algol is one of the most one of the most disastrous stars in ancient astrology. But it's really about the reality of adapting to the material cycle of oscillation, which does include, right, death and rebirth, and giving and receiving and surrendering that which needs to go, and adjusting to the needs of the collective in a physical or material way. So there's a lot of ways that this has been coming about, but also too, Venus is just coming off of her conjunction with the North Node at this point. So this is happening today, actually. So by the time we get to Saturday, the moon is meeting Saturn, and this is, again, like I said, a huge Pleiadian activation, while Venus is in a sextile to Neptune. So you do see that we're kind of getting pulled, it's just like this tug of war between parts of ourselves that is going from the feminine, the watery, the more intuitive, the more non-rational, feeling-based, sense-based experiences. And then you got Saturn in Aquarius, and you got the Sun in Gemini too, and you have the conflict again of being in relationship and in harmony with the world around, and having that truly just be enough. Okay, or Taurus nature that comes around to Aquarius, and the reason they're in square to each other is because Aquarius is using the heightened and awakened human civilization and advanced technology, advanced communication, all of these things, and being in harmony with nature, using that, using our consciousness collectively and our resources collectively in order to be in harmony with nature. But it does require the journey all the way around the zodiac to this point, and to establish this sense of innovation and thinking outside of the box and futuristic, awakened perspective of the human potential. So this square here is in an Atlantean overlay with the Pleiades, and also with this being also an Orion connection, right? 25 to 26 degrees of Aquarius. What we're looking at here is that story coming around again, right? There is potential for the human collective to evolve, to utilize our knowledge, our consciousness, to grow, to perfect our form, to be able to create more power, more energy, establish different patterns of meaning, different structures, right? And to have a collective resonance that is at a higher frequency, using all of the tools and the knowledge that we've addressed. But we can't do it at the expense necessarily of being taken away from just our connection to the world as is, right? Being in harmony as a function of just being alive, right? Just being a living being able to tap into the electromagnetics of the planet, not necessarily needing all this other stuff to do it. This is the fundamental challenge and conflict of the Atlantean story between the Pleiadians and whatever Orion influence, whether it be Aldebaran, whether it be certain, the AI, the reptilian, whatever, right? Orion is a big system. There are a lot of beings. There are a lot of Orion starseeds from all kinds of different star systems. So, but it's their influence definitely was part of the story, right? And so when you look at the Pleiadian and Orion influences, how they Taurus and Aquarius, they are square to each other, right? You're seeing this play out, and we're feeling it being played out. And we're also feeling a sense with Venus of just like, I just want to be. I want these aspects in my material life, my relationships, that which I value, to just be here for everyone's benefit, right? Cultivating it for the collective. And I think really the square here, especially with the moon involved, is a reality check. Not so much that is a negative thing, but the emotional investment into something that is our responsibility, right? And the incredible amount of density that we're experiencing, and the pressure that is needed in order to balance that out. Is something that I think that, this is kind of a wet blanket in some ways, with the moon and Saturn retrograde conjunct, especially with Venus and Taurus and the Pleiades, right? It's just like, man, you just really want to feel into all of those senses and really cultivate it, not just, like I said, not just for ourselves, but, for the sake of, it's more about tapping. The conflict is that we are intuitively, emotionally, maybe personally, feeling into the heaviness and what it actually takes in order, for the battery of our own heart in some ways to be able to hold the charge, right? And just like our heart, the human heart is an electro pump, and it gives out an electromagnetic frequency. And this square is, on so many levels, is exemplifying that experience. So this is on Saturday. Sunday, we come into, the moon is now in Pisces. Like I said, coming into Sunday, this is Father's Day here. I can't speak for the rest of the world. I just know in the United States, maybe in the whole Western world, there may be a Father's Day thing. Every day is Father's Day. But in terms of, a collective focus, I do see passing Saturn coming into Pisces as well. And what else is happening here? So Mercury has now come out of its shadow by Sunday. So we are now passing into new conceptual territory with Mercury by Sunday. And so there will be new challenges. And this is Hyades territory. Mercury coming into 5 to 6 degrees of Gemini. This is one of the main stars in the Hyades star cluster. So we talked about this in the first Catalyst classroom, and all of the Hyades starseed traits. And so if you are so it's going to be especially powerful. So even some direct communication, possibly, depending on where Gemini is in your chart, but also just there's going to be more ambition behind our communication, thinking, the movement of information, right? Just like light moves through any kind of medium that it is exposed to, right? Space, water, a vacuum, whatever. It does not move through matter, though. Not visual light. X-rays will go through organic matter, right? So that's something to keep in mind. That's how they're able to measure, the idea of dark matter has been conceptualized because of that idea that it has gravity and has mass, but it doesn't seem to, and light goes around it, but we don't see it. So anyway, that's a different discussion. The point I'm trying to make here is that Mercury is coming out of shadow in its home sign of Gemini. The movement of the speed of light, right? Information, thoughts, the concepts, communication is there's an ambition here, and there's a sense of swelling and discovery and exploration that is about to start really coming online. New territory, I guess, is that Mercury coming into this position is then going to soon be in a sextile to Jupiter. We see what else? Yeah, that's the one. Mercury and Jupiter coming into a sextile during this week, and the moon coming into Pisces. So when we get to the third quarter moon and the solstice on the 21st, we're going to see exactly what I was talking about. The moon's going to meet Neptune. It's going to square the sun at 30 degrees Gemini, 30 degrees Pisces, and to be aware that it's the clearly visualized archetype is what's coming in. And so when we are and in a spiritual sense, in a cosmic sense, in a template, right? We have to visualize the energetic template and have it and visualize it. We have to feel it. We have to know it and have it come with us into the next stage. And it's more than just making a decision about this or that, okay? And I think that's going to be kind of a little, it's going to upend us a little bit, and that's always part of the third quarter moon, right? So go back to the full moon, right? The strawberry moon that was at its perigee, the brightest and the closest to us, and be like, how did that feel, right? What culminated at that point that is now causing a reorientation within ourselves as the sun continues to move through Gemini. So the solstice is on the 21st, 0 degrees Cancer. Right, and we also see that Venus is going to be in a trine with Pluto as well. Venus is still in conjunction with the Pleiades, 28 to 29 degrees Taurus. It's going to be in a trine to Pluto retro during this time, right after the solstice, right? And so this is, again, that perspective. And Pluto's about to move into, in its retrograde, back into the 27, 28 degree, which is where the actual Pluto return of the U.S. chart is, 27 degrees, 35 minutes, 39 minutes, something like that. So it's moving back into that territory right as Venus is in a trine. And so we've talked about this many times. This was Mercury, and the idea of this perspective, well, now it's going to be felt in our senses, in our relationships, in the value of the resources that we identify as valuable, right? In our comfortability, in what feels harmonious within our own self. And this is absolutely in the energetic fields, right? Like tapping into the electromagnetics and the energy of the people around us, the world around us, the electromagnetics of the planet, the Schumann resonance, all of that kind of stuff. And so again, perspective. But it's not going to be an idea anymore. Mercury has made sure to go over this point like at least a billion times in its retrograde. And now it's with Venus, it's much more powerful in the senses and less so in the mind. And so keep an eye out for that, especially right after the solstice, because we make decisions here, right? We set our root system. This is where we're going to bloom, where we're planted. And that is the name of the game for the rest of this season, at least. And so what's going on through the rest of the week is really just going to be the beginning of the downward descent here in the northern hemisphere, and the southern hemisphere really starting to descend or to ascend back up the wave function, right? That you've reached the point of minimum light. So you know the light is coming back, and the growth and the power that you can draw from this is where your power truly can come from down in the southern hemisphere. So yeah, there's just, the moon is going to move into Aries, which means it's going to meet Chiron, it's going to beat Mars, Jupiter, and certainly that's going to turn on some fiery, very flame-oriented emotions, right? Maybe steamy, inflammation, dude. Like moon in Aries is always, there's a lot of inflammation, and now you have Jupiter and Mars involved, as well as Chiron. So things will be inflamed. They most certainly will after the solstice. And just know, okay, I made my decision. This is where I'm going to be planted during this time period, especially this season, right? The solstice to the equinox, and really solstice to solstice. So, and we're gonna, Tuesday, Wednesday, coming into Thursday, Friday, when the moon will come into Taurus and meet Uranus, it will meet the North Node, and then, we'll get a sense of really where our emotional security is really coming from in terms of the world around us. So we'll talk more about that next week. Certainly we will address these themes again on Monday for the Starseed Ministry, of course, when I share the reading and we tap into more of the energies and really focusing on how starseeds and lightworkers can move forward during these times. So that's all I have for the astrology for this astrology report, my friends. I'm going to check in with the stream. People are talking about feeling lax about meditation and their practice and haven't gotten back into the flow after like major transition in their life. That makes a lot of sense, actually. And people are talking, Barb's about what is blocked, very much so, is that we're in this process right now of establishing that, like for reals, not just the idea of it. And this is part of the Pleiadian revival, right? And the moon and the nodes are changing, right? By the time we get to the solstice and beyond, the nodes have moved into the next degree in their transit, which is we're out of Pleiadian territory now. We are that's starting to fade now. And so the idea is that we've learned a lot during this time, and we have been, like I said, lots of practice opportunities, and now we get to kind of do a scrimmage or put them into actual practice of being in tune with the world around us to reconfigure our energetics, and really establish for ourselves what it really feels like and what our inner voice really sounds like, because it's probably going to be more and more difficult as we continue forward to keep that balanced and centeredness as more and more and more distractions and the information war rages on. Because when you only have this or that, I mean, there's only so much that you can work with as a strategy, but it doesn't mean that the amplification of that back and forth can't be turned up to 11. And I feel like that's going to be the case. We still have July to get through, my friends, with the but I feel like we all got the tools, right? We all have the tools. And don't be too hard on yourself if you feel like you've gotten out of like some sort of routine. Lots of people are talking about how they are, like I said, especially people who are in the healing arts already professionally, are finding themselves really feeling the call to pull back. They're feeling the call to reorganize how they are offering their services. They're feeling a need to have respite just in terms of their relationship to their service or their work or their clients. And so what I do see is that a really very natural and intuitively picked up on, for the most part, people get these messages in all different ways to really start establishing that root system within themselves, or to tap into the root system that they've already been establishing for themselves, and how that is going to stabilize them through the climbing back up, the peak, climbing back up the mountain of the wave function. You know what I mean? As you come in, as the southern hemisphere is coming into their winter solstice time and, making the journey back up to the top. So I would say don't be too hard on yourself, and realize that transitions take a lot of energy, and sometimes it can be just as simple as it doesn't have to be this grand gesture necessarily. And I think we all know this, right? So sometimes it's a helpful reminder to just realize that you can make anything into a dedicated practice, and find that space in order to clear away the distractions. So, and sometimes they come at unexpected, unplanned moments, and those are great. I like a thunderstorm that just went on for like an hour, and just standing outside and just, not even doing anything, not even speaking to each other, just like, whoa, for like an hour, just like beholding, right? that can, and if you don't have an hour, you have 2 minutes. That's still, when you start to realize that time is relative to our frequency, and that that also changes our perspective. All of a sudden, that 2 minutes, that 2 minutes can be 2 lifetimes. In terms of your energy body, your spirit, and your soul. So that's also a good thing to keep in mind as well. So, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much. So just real quick, just to remind people, especially if you're not on my email list, because that's where I announce a lot of these things, and on Telegram. It's the only social media I use. The other thing I've noticed too is a serious disengagement on social media from people who are using it as their promotional, main promotional platform, but also just in general. So if you're not feeling that, and that's okay, the email list is like very a month, what's going on at the new moon, full moon, all of the offerings. So I'm offering the Starseed readings at a sale price at 25% off. I did lower them to $88 just across the board, but I'm offering them right now for $66. And the solstice reading, right? Looking at your chart from solstice to solstice. And both of these are bookable from my website, catalystenergies.net. You can link directly from the description box below. It'll give you an option. So as long as they're posted on the homepage, I will be offering these sales. So right now I'm still offering them. So good time to take advantage of it and see what's going on, or at the very least getting a foundation of your starseed markings. And they, it's evolving, right? New placements come online for me as I'm evolving too. So I'm soon going to be offering kind of a mini starseed, like an add-on soon for people who have already had the readings, but want to see if anything new comes up for them. So that's coming in the future, just to give you a heads up. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly, truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm going to send you away with my outro music and some links. I will see you guys on Monday for the Starseed Ministry. Thank you so much for every contribution you make to this entire, journey that we're all on. Everybody's voice matters. Everybody's voice is, has the same impact now. So thank you for being true to that. And I really honor this space together with all of you guys. Take care of yourselves. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday.